All right, guys, I'll get started. I'm really intending to go through this quicker than the 420 so that we're just sharp and sweet. Thanks for signing up. I think very soon, once it all goes through, we'll have like a MyPL link for a non-registered course. Chris asked me to do that, and she's looking to get it actually accredited so you can actually get some institute hours. But I'll kind of count this as the first part of it. I think it's going to be maybe possibly 4 hours or something like that if you include all the different things, and could add on a bit of extra stuff because there is like readings and things like that which take up extra time. All right, so just have a look at this. This is the learning intentions for the whole course, the seminars mainly, but I think the main one that we're going to look at today, we're not really going to touch English grammar today. That's more for the second seminar. But we are going to talk about the differences between spoken-like and written-like language. And I'll give you a strategy to be able to begin to move students along from... But when I talk about spoken-like language, I'm talking about the way that they speak, but it's written down on the page when they answer a response. Compared to written-like language, which we'll look at in more detail what academic writing actually looks like and what are the characteristics. So we'll kind of just touch on that today, and also we're looking to get some strategies to actually teach and assess writing. And in terms of the success criteria, I think the main one, I mean, all of these will really kind of come as you're teaching and as you take what we learn from the course and apply it to your own teaching. But we'll kind of begin to achieve a few of these with the activities that we're doing today. Hey. Sorry. That's all right. Feel free to come in. Just sign and grab one of those sheets there. All right. Now, this is what I'm hoping you begin to see from your perspective as a teacher. I'm hoping you'll first of all notice that the text that you're asking students to create are created with specific contexts in mind, and that you'll explicitly teach about those contexts. You'll begin to notice the differences between your writing, like the way that you write as a university-educated human being, and the way that your students are writing paragraphs. And hopefully you'll be able to notice differences in your writing that you can improve on with your own writing style. When we begin to talk about grammar, you'll hopefully develop a common language that you can speak to students about writing. And you begin to notice the differences between what you write and what you expect. An example. All right. Just to begin with, now I know we have 2 maths teachers in the room, so this might be interesting. But has anyone, when you're given a writing task, had the classic response, why are we doing this? Or like, what purpose does this serve in my life? Yeah, okay, we probably ask exactly the same thing when it comes to all the paperwork that we have to do. Today I'm trying to just address those questions and hopefully give you, maybe not a response that they'll like to begin with, but hopefully try to fill in these gaps that students actually want, which is a context to write in. But I want to begin by talking about 2 common writing tasks that you would give in the average lesson or the average assessment, which I'm classing a short writing task as maybe like a short sentence response or up to a paragraph. So something that you'd expect maybe to complete within 10 minutes. Maybe you'd have multiple of them in a lesson. And then when I say longer writing tasks, I'm talking about usually assessment grade length, like maybe an essay or a report that's multiple paragraphs. Just discuss between yourselves, and then we'll do it corporately. When you set up a short writing task, what comes before that in your KLA on a common, like, average day? I'm looking for like maybe your default in your KLA when you talk about a short writing task. So maybe that's your justifications, guys. And then a longer writing task, in a really summarised way, how do you actually start those longer tasks off? Okay, I'll just give you a few minutes. Cool, all right. Excellent. Well, I completely overheard everything that they said, so I'll start with this group. Fee, short answer.
Short answers, we're just talking about maybe in things like prepping for examinations where there's short answer responses, I would say to the students to be clued in by how many marks things are worth as to how much they might have to write. But in terms of, when if it's a sentence, it's capital letters, full stops, like grammar, punctuation. Like I probably don't do as much exemplars, modelling, joint construction, or anything like that.
Yeah.
When it's a short answer.
Okay. Do you like what your students are producing? Like, do you feel like the majority kind of produce what you'd expect? Okay. So do you kind of indicate it just by like maybe a tick or a cross to say that you're happy with the response, or that you feel like they've done it well?
As I'm going around, I would say to them, you need to.
Yeah.
You need to write this in a full sentence.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Cool. Anyone else from the table? Just quickly.
I think across the board we all agree we maybe put more focus on the longer writing tasks than the shorter ones.
Naturally, yeah.
And that we modelling seems to be anything we all sort of do, or always start together and then get people to take their own, and peel paragraphs and things like that. They know the structure a little.
Yeah, cool.
Better.
Yeah. What do you reckon the division is between like short answer tasks, say across a whole term, short answer tasks compared to long answer tasks, in terms of like a fraction or a percentage?
See, we don't do any essays that I can think of in Year 7 or Year 8.
Yeah.
We did one Year 9 last year, but probably doesn't start till Year 10.
Yeah. What would be like the longest response that you get a Year 7 or a Year 8 student to do? Like aside from maybe like a recount or a narrative or something.
Descriptions and things like that, but not like paragraph, or maybe a couple of paragraphs, but not essays.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this is good. I'm actually enjoying the fact that we've got different faculties.
Trying to build on that as we go.
Yep.
You do peel paragraphs.
Peel paragraphs.
Yeah, that's basically maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs. Basically.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Cool. Well, there's a lot more that we could talk about, but I guess I'll just focus on the idea that short writing tasks are a really condensed, short, easy way to teach the skills that are needed in the longer writing task. But I just personally, as a teacher, before I was here, I was teaching for 4 years, English, 6 months at Cranebrook, 3 or so years doing English, and then 6 months doing history out at Chester Hill High School. And I found that there was a lot of emphasis, for 2 weeks on the longer writing tasks, but the connection that I made between the short writing tasks and the long writing task was kind of just ignored. And I think when we're looking to develop, say, just our point sentences and improving the quality of the point sentences, because in a peel paragraph, the point sentence is the idea that the student has about whatever topic they're responding to. So it's the thing that you can spend the most time crafting, because it's usually their response to the question, as opposed to the example, which is usually the secondary source that they're getting from, or they're giving an analogy or something like that. You can really prepare students well to write point sentences with the short answer questions that you write throughout. But I guess I mainly just ask those questions to get you thinking about the connection between these two, and thinking about how much they're connected in your classroom. All right, we're going to talk about 4 different things. So now we're moving on. Every writing task should have a clearly defined context, which I'm going to talk more about now. Now, this is the 4 elements of context that should be really clear in the student's mind if they're going to produce something that I guess is what you're looking for. The first thing relates to purpose. So the social purpose of the text influences our choice of genre for the task. When I text my wife saying that I'm going to come home soon, the genre is going to be a very short, first-person sentence, as opposed to a really long essay, which she's probably not going to read, just saying that I'm coming home. That's one idea of how purpose defines the genre. But if we think about let's just say Year 7 history, okay? Take yourself back to Tutankhamun and the pyramids and the gods, learning about Egyptian gods. You could do a few lessons where you're building the field, which I'll talk about in a minute, about, the gods in Egypt or the societal structure. And you're getting students to write maybe, responses to see if they've learnt the knowledge. But for each different student in the classroom, they may have a different understanding of purpose, as in why they're actually writing these things down, that you could define and make sure that everyone's on the right track. Okay, so I'll give you a few examples. These are kind of maybe from both a student and teacher perspective, and they could all be happening within the same classroom. Okay, you could have one student who thinks the purpose is to let Sir know about the gods of Egypt. Okay, so let me just put down some knowledge about Ra or whatever. Whereas perhaps your focus was on something else about describing the impact of gods on Egypt society. So you're thinking one purpose, whereas your students are thinking another purpose, and you maybe haven't clearly defined it, or they're just kind of going with what they think you're expecting. It could be to express how I would feel if I were a slave in Egyptian society. Now this would require a different genre, okay, than the first one, which was an explanation task. It would require something that's more narrative based or perhaps poetic, because we're talking about feelings. To evaluate the moral and ethical issues of slavery using ancient Egyptian society as a case study. That wouldn't really be appropriate for a Year 7 class, but the text type, the purpose and the text type then have to be different. And then finally, to get good marks on my assignment, the text type might be copying and pasting information. Students may think that copying and pasting is what enables them to get good marks, but perhaps they just don't have a clear understanding of purpose. Now, whenever we write, it stems from a social purpose, which means what purpose is this text going to achieve in relationship to somebody else, or in relationship to an organisation or the school in general. And I personally didn't really spend too much time focusing on purpose before I realised how powerful it was. But I'll keep moving through the other three for now. Now, field tenor and mode is something that a lot of old school teachers have probably heard of, because it was something that was kind of just like the New South Wales teaching standards and the quality teaching framework. Field tenor and mode was something that was common across all KLAs, and it was like a key literacy fundamental. And so usually if you've been around for maybe 25 years, this would be familiar to you. But when I talk about field, I'm talking about the topic of the text. But I'm talking about tenor, I'm talking about the relationship between the person composing and the person responding. And mode is basically text type. So essay, narrative, explanation. Now, just to get you thinking about this, we'll do a quick activity. Now, you'll notice on the table in front of you are a few different articles. Okay, I've only got one of the Dean and Davina one, but just have a look at that one first. Anyone here watched Married at First Sight? Yes. Okay, very good. So the aim of this is just to be able to describe, just using dot points or just even talking, the field, tenor and mode of text on the table. Okay, now I'm going to demonstrate kind of what I'm talking about with this first example. Okay, so there's a few different extracts on the table. You're only going to skim read them. Like, I'm not expecting to read them. Just look over them generally. Maybe look at the headings. Maybe look at the first topic sentence or something like that. I'm not expecting you to spend too long on each one unless it really interests you. But let's take that Dean and Davina text. Okay, the field of this text centres on the rating success of the TV show. Okay, it's not about the show itself or necessarily what happened in the episode. The field of the text is actually on the ratings success of the show, but it will integrate other subtopics within it that may be explicitly said or implicitly said, like adultery, Dean and Davina's relationship on the show, marriage and commitment, as well as a whole range of different things. So within a text, you can have a major field, but you can also have kind of like subtopics and subfields that require knowledge to fully understand what the text is saying. Okay. The tenor, which is the relationship between composer and responder. So Rob Moran, frequently published entertainment writer. I just found this out in lots of different newspapers. The intended audience is, one, to catch people who watch the show, maybe to legitimize that they're watching a show that lots of other people are watching, okay? And two, others who maybe don't watch the show, but they're flicking through entertainment and looking for something for TV to watch. The audience in this text isn't actually mentioned. And also something to consider is that the writer's been paid to write the article, which could influence the way it's written. And finally, we have a newspaper article as the text type, which usually centers on a headline, which catches attention, and then that headline's developed throughout the text, and it might have different topics or categories throughout it. Just skim read now, like each table has two different texts, so you can kind of split them, make sure each one's doing a different one maybe. And on the second page, on the back of this page, just in one of these here, just quickly jot down, I'm only really expecting like a dot point or just something that describes the field, tenor and mode. And if you need to remember what it is or what it means, there's some descriptions down the side there, okay? And feel free to talk about it if you just want to do it all together. Whatever you want to do, that's fine. Cool. Now, just I'm kind of guessing that, like from what I could see from the discussion, you guys are all getting it right. When it comes to maybe doing this within the classroom, I think for us as teachers, we want to explicitly lay out for students what the field, tenor and mode is, rather than leave it up to themselves to work it out at a year 7 and 8 level. But maybe you might, instead of doing just blank pieces of paper, you might give a few options, and they have to circle the option that fits the text, and you can kind of then have a discussion about maybe why one student circled this, why another student circled this, and come to a point where everything's really narrowed and focused. Because you can start generally just talk about the field and just say, oh, it's science. Like there's one that's like a science textbook here, like about cells. The field's science. Every student probably would say that, but it's talking about like the cell membrane, which is like a deeper field, and then in that how the nucleus works within the cell, and then within that what actually happens within the nucleus. And the deeper you go, the more abstract and technical vocabulary you need to actually write about that topic. So the more you narrow the field for what you're expecting in a writing task, the more vocabulary that you're actually expecting from students. So beginning with setting the context, whether it's a short answer or a long answer, I think it's really personally important to really narrow down the field that you're expecting them to actually write in, as opposed to keeping it general and just saying, this is going to be a World War I response or whatever. Okay. One comment from this table about you went through like an article about migrants. What did you say was the field for that text, or what dot points did you put down?
Academic results, migrant students, and value of education.
Okay, good. The tenor?
Justine Dandy was the author.
Yep.
And she was employed by BBC to write the text.
Yep.
And it was the intended responder was probably Australian-born. And Australia wasn't looking to value education; they're not taking for granted.
Yep.
On their agenda.
Yep. Is the writer writing from a state of being like an expert on the topic?
Yes. He was a senior psychologist.
Okay. Yeah.
Senior lecturer in psychology.
Okay. Cool. And the mode is obviously a newspaper article. Okay. Cool. You guys just quickly.
We did the design technology text 2.
Yep.
We said the field was like environmental issues, had subtopics of greenhouse gases, pollution. The tenor, we said it was, it says it's an Excel textbook at the bottom, by an academic expert in that
Yep.
area.
Yep.
To educate students. The mode we thought was probably like an information report because there was use of diagrams.
Yep.
It gave a bit of a summary, but kind of lacked, that depth. Didn't go into too much
Yep.
detail. So it's just like a bit of a summary.
Yeah, yeah. Is it interesting that you say about like, environmental issues? Because I mean, you may not have the information to do that, but from where that chapter's from, it's actually about how environmental issues impact on design.
Yes.
Yeah. So the focus of the text is like the elements that go into considering a design and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I don't know if that was on there.
No, we said it says D&T, so we figured it was something to do.
Yeah. Okay.
Those lines,
Yeah. So it's another good question as well when you have, because these are like model texts that maybe you would give out to build the field, but to also begin to show maybe the mode that you want students to write in, or the style of writing that they want to write in, and even when it comes to tenor as well, like pointing out the fact that these people sound like they're experts and they're not saying, oh, I think it means that migrants are disadvantaged or something like that. So yeah. Any thoughts on how maybe you could use discussion on field tenor and mode in the KLA that you're in, or adapt it to a class that you're thinking of, or do you not know it well enough yet to? Yeah.
We've got students who write as if write for English. Like I always say, take English hat off because she writes just like using I and I will argue, and whereas you don't write like that in history, you don't write like that in legal studies. So trying to get look at an English text or English discovery essay as opposed to an English history text and look at the differences.
Yep.
I like what you said about how that it sounds like it's an expert. What is it that they said to make it sound like an expert?
Yeah. Yeah, just pointing that feature out.
In my visual music class, I often find that I would use this in a way that for musical discussions we have to explain the technique using the song, and probably that tenor part is the kids know that I've heard the song that they're studying a million times, and it's actually getting them to explain it to me like I've never heard it before.
Yeah.
That's a really good thing.
Cool. I'll just think about this, like out of field tenor and mode, like everyone I know does field because field is your subject, your content matter, and a lot of the times we kind of get overwhelmed by the content that we have to teach as opposed to the skills. So I'm very confident just knowing myself that field is something that we cover a lot, and we try to give as much, detailed explanation as we can within the field. But maybe you don't use the word tenor and mode, but I'm sure you do, talk about, the structure of a paragraph or something like that. But how often do you reckon you talk about tenor and mode in comparison to field when you're trying to set up a writing task? Could even do like a ratio, maybe like. I feel like mine would be like 72%, and then whatever the remainder is for mode, Field would be heaps, yeah? Can anyone think of examples of when they talk about tenor? Like, 28, thank you.
When we look at the critical literacy for the anti-smoking messages, and when we're looking at those sorts of things, maybe we, not as specifically, we don't say, specifically say tenor, but we would say who's the audience.
Yeah, like target audience.
Sort of thing. So we would do a lot of it sort of around those messages when we're, diet choices and advertising and things.
Yeah. Cool. This is a good time to plug something which you've seen, and for 5 lucky people, I've got hard copies if they want them. But the readings for the course that have been emailed out, like all of them are hyperlinked, and I don't want to like overkill trees or anything like that by doing 20 copies. But each of the readings are like quite short, but they focus more specifically on like expanding on what field tenor and mode is and how they're used in different contexts. Like there's a few different texts that talk about field tenor and mode and what it is and how it can be used. So it might be worthwhile to flick through and have a look at that. And I'll just leave these here. If anyone wants to grab them on the way out, you'll be the proud owner of a hard copy.
sold it so well.
Yeah. I think it's
Fighting for it when we're leaving.
it's all really, really good stuff, really clear. Some of them are,
Is one of them,
yeah. A few, yeah. I did a 24-hour course with Jo,
Yeah.
like an external PL where she like mentored me and another teacher at our school.
You know that she's the CLM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I heard about that. No, that's all right. See ya. Catch you later.
Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, so, and she's really, really good,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
she's at the top of her game and
Yeah.
writes really clearly. So, yeah. I guess the main emphasis is to think about, well, tenor. Tenor is really what we all consider when we write a text, right? We're not going to go blasting in, to, our employer. I was thinking, I'm actually in a place where we're working here, but you're not going to go blasting in without considering, who you're actually talking to. Like the way I chat to Tina is very different to how I chat to Chris or to Tess, just because there's a different relationship, a different tenor. But I personally don't teach that enough. And when it comes to writing, like you see sometimes they're writing maybe like resumes that aren't really formal and appropriate for a workplace. The main issue is not necessarily knowing the field, like they know what their experience is. They know the subheadings and categories that they need for mode. What they're actually missing is an understanding of the audience that they're writing to. And that's where we should focus more of our time, I personally think. All right, final activity, okay? The use of the mode continuum to build field knowledge, refine writing expectations, and analyze written text. This is all about writing within a context, okay? And this is a good way to begin to teach field tenor and mode. And it's also a way to make yourself really vulnerable in front of your class. Which is always good. I like to, I've done this heaps and heaps of times before, no matter what topic it's been. And I've always started by saying, look, yes, I've been to university, but, when I was doing this, 6 years ago, I was sitting in exactly the same position that you're in. And for me to stand in front of you and put my writing on display, as well as your writing, makes me nervous, because I've got to think about, one, am I getting it down correctly in front of, 25 people or whatever? But it's a good chance to have an honest conversation and say, look, writing isn't just meant to be a, quick say it and that's done. It's actually a thinking process, and it takes time to prepare, and it takes time to actually nut out what good writing looks like. So this is kind of like your, draft, and then we're moving towards making it more written-like, and you're kind of scaffolding that process by moving it along what's called a mode continuum, okay? So the learning intention to understand that a mode continuum is a useful tool to demonstrate the differences between spoken-like and written-like language, as well as set clear expectations for writing. Okay, so here's what a mode continuum looks like. This is from a science experiment. Just have a look at the progression between most spoken-like to more written-like, and see what you notice. So what we see here in these 4 examples is that, and I explained this in one of the e-lecture things, I explain what lexical density is. I won't spend time to do it, but when you move from more spoken-like to written-like, there's an increase in what's called lexical density. It pretty much just means content words, like nouns, adjectives, something that give you a picture, like something maybe concrete, compared to grammatical words, okay, which are just like the connection points and they don't have meaning by themselves. And you'll see here we start with 4 lexical words to 4 grammatical words, and we end up with 5 lexical words to 2 grammatical words. Yeah. So this is a pretty typical observation, isn't it, when you would do an experiment, in science, like it's present tense to begin with. It's using pronouns to replace what's actually moving, because there's an assumed this is what I see. But then there's also this progress between what we see and actually developing it. All right. Any part of that doesn't make sense, or that you want me to point out and explain a little bit more? You get the idea of it's moving from the spoken line. Okay, cool. All right. Now, let's just think about this, okay? Now, the field if we're going for like, religious studies or something like that, could be Islamic religious practices. But before we even think about that, what are some things, just without giving you context to this image at all, what are just some things that you observe? You're completely blind at the moment. Okay.
It's prayer time at an airport.
Yeah, without, at first glance, it looks like he's being told to get down on the ground. Yeah.
Okay.
Doesn't the security guard put the wrong shoulders though, something like that? He doesn't look like he's actually, No, when I look, when you look more closely, yeah. But anyway, sorry, that's not the point of what you're trying to.
No, that's fine. No, this is good. This is good. Like we're thinking about something. Like if you know airports well, you know that this is kind of like obviously where the baggage is kind of picked up, and usually when you get off a flight, you have to wait around for ages and wait for your bags. So there could be some connection there, but you don't really have an idea of the field yet to be able to really make sense of this image. So I'll just give you a few contextual pieces. This was one of 20 photographs that I think it was in Time magazine in 2017. In terms of like the most significant photographs from 2017. This was, I think, maybe 2 or 3 hours after the Donald Trump travel ban in America. And so these people had arrived from a particular country, like their flight had arrived from a particular country, but they weren't allowed access into America through the like border control system because their country had been deemed to be yeah, like the movie Terminal. That's right. Yeah, very good. So that kind of changes the field a little bit, like gives you an understanding of what they're experiencing. But the stated field that I gave you was not about Donald Trump or political things. It was actually about just Islamic religious practices. So why we're looking at this picture is not really to focus on the political stuff, but it's actually just to focus on what in the religion of Islam are practices that they might perform. Now, they're praying out of protest, but again, that's not what we're looking for. Can you see sometimes, though, that if you don't define the field, students may go off on a tangent without really narrowing it down?
Happens a lot in NAPLAN.
Okay. What do you mean by that?
I feel like the NAPLAN stimulus, what was it 1 year, if you could change the rule if you could change one rule in a school, what would it be?
Yeah.
And I think their minds went crazy and the responses they weren't academic and they didn't provide, but you could just see them scribbling and the new thought was providing
emotional almost sometimes.
Yeah.
Rather, if the thing had said, right at this basic thing about canteen not supplying, school canteen not supplying junk food, that would have been more,
Yeah.
But see, my first thought when I saw this is, because obviously just the media, like, thinking they're terrorists or something like that. It's just the way that
Yeah.
the things that we see in the media, every time you see something to do with Islam, or not every time, but sometimes it's, they're commenting on.
Yeah. So with the writing task, what we're negotiating is every student's bringing in their own different ideas, but we're really trying to narrow down why we're using what we're using. And it's worthwhile even with small writing tasks. Like this is pretty much just going to be, a sentence or maybe 2 sentences, to really narrow down the field before you really engage with the text, so that we make sure that everyone's on the same page. Because this could go off, on massive tangents. But yeah, I agree with the NAPLAN thing. I don't think really that 10 minutes or 5 minutes is enough time to plan to write something of great quality. But there are still things that you can get from it as well. Okay, so when we think about Islamic religious practices, does anyone have any vocab or even just describing what you're seeing there? Like we've got, it's prayer time at an airport. What makes you think that? What do you see?
That's because it's our background knowledge, isn't it?
Yeah, knowing the group of Islamic people bow to the ground through prayer.
Okay.
They're all facing the same way, facing Mecca.
Yep.
That's correct, isn't it?
The ground. Okay.
So they're all, it's not like they're randomly on the ground, they're facing the same direction.
Direction. Unity. Okay.
Sort of like a common understanding of that.
So it's prayer time at an airport. Like that could be actually like a good response. Like I can think of many students over time who would just say that as their first response. It's prayer time at an airport, and they might actually get the answer right, or half a mark or something like that. They bow down to the ground, facing the same direction. Unity. Anything? Oh, you said facing Mecca. Okay. Very good. Well, what I'm
have all that background knowledge.
yeah,
don't know all this. So
exactly.
not.
So what I'm going to introduce to you is some vocab, so we can move it along. Okay. So you might describe it as bow to the ground or kneeling down, but it's prayer, but it's also got a specific name. So we would say the Salat prayer, which is the second pillar of Islam, something that, from my understanding, happens at certain times each day, and it's one of the 5 times a day. Yeah. Okay. So perhaps they use the word bow, but in here we've got kneeling, bowing to lower head. Now I don't know how to pronounce this. The Qibla, which has symbolic value about the very word that we had here, which was unity, about each Muslim, no matter where they are in the world, having a sense of they're facing the same direction. Okay. Now, to that as well, you might want to introduce something about a mosque and the fact that this isn't a mosque, and yet they are still performing their practices. And the Kaaba as well, which I'm pretty sure is where they're actually facing in Mecca, the Kaaba mosque. So all of this is new vocabulary to most people, even myself. We've got some understanding here, but if we were to give a focused question, describe a feature of the religious practices of Islam, we're just asking for characteristics and features, which is what describing is. Can we now integrate some of this vocabulary to maybe produce an answer to this question? Anyone? Or maybe actually, because I did actually prepare room for this, just quickly, back of this booklet, you don't have to write down what's on the board unless you find yourself really pedantic about getting everything down. But just have a go at writing a sentence that answers this question down here, probably somewhere around this end, because you're writing it down and we've already kind of done the spoken like discussion. Now, if you were doing this with a class, as opposed to, again, university-educated people, maybe like with Year 12, you might actually get them, after you do this, to write it down, because you're going to assume that they could put something together, they could discuss. You might give them a bit of like a sentence starter, or the start to a sentence. So, yeah, the Salat prayer. You'll point out the fact that when you're describing something, you're starting with like a noun group, like some feature that you're looking to describe. And we're going to assume next that the next part of this sentence is actually going to describe what this is, or expand on it a little bit more. Did anyone actually start their sentence like this? Okay, what did you say?
The Salat prayer in the Islamic religion involves several conditions that are followed by a group.
Wow. Okay. Oh yeah, well, I'll write this down first because that was quite long. I couldn't catch it. Say it slower.
In the Islamic religion,
yep.
Involves several conditions
Yep.
That are followed by a group.
That are followed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Followed by a group. So in this case, your focus is actually on the second pillar of Islam. Is that what you're talking about when you say several conditions?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. The next sentence then would probably go on with the condition. Yeah. Which is basic explanation structure, right? Where you have this second part of the sentence then becomes the first part of the next sentence, and there's a continuing growth of the development of the explanation. Yeah. Okay. Did anyone mention about bowing down or using any of those terms in their sentence? Or does anyone just want to chuck quickly their sentence out?
I had it in my first sentence.
Yep. What did you say?
I said Muslim people at set times each day undertake salat prayer where they kneel and bow facing the Kaaba mosque in Mecca.
Okay, so you've integrated.
So I've done it, I've kind of put the first and second sentence into one.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, that's good. That's, again, achieving the same purpose. Okay. Just quickly, one more. Does anyone else get one down? Okay, cool. Now I'm not.
I still had mine I didn't have mine in past tense.
Okay, what did you have?
So I thought that was good that they went straight into the past tense.
Yeah, because I think they're used to writing in that academic register.
Oh,
yeah. Which is fun.
Pointing out that I'm just a step back.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I get you. Put it here.
That's what you think students would do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's past. So that's present. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But that's all right because it's something that's still practice. It's not talking about the past necessarily. What did you have, Tina, though?
Oh, Islamic religious practices include people praying, salat prayer, kneeling on the ground with knees facing Kaaba mosque in Mecca.
Okay, just give me that first bit. Islamic religious practices include.
Because I used the words in the question.
The question, yeah, which is typical. Yep.
People praying, salat prayers. I didn't know if it was just men that did it.
Yeah.
Kneeling on the ground. Unity.
I'll just end it there just for, I'm running out of board space. But, so here we've got a different approach, still not wrong or incorrect, but you've actually got what would be considered more of like a point sentence, where you've got the practices, then you're listing, and then there's going to be assumption that it will follow the pattern of the next sentence will probably focus on what this means, then about why they kneel down perhaps, and continue it that way. Is that kind of the style that you were thinking of?
Yeah, and I think that's really good how you've identified the difference between the explanation there and then the point sentence.
Yeah.
I hadn't realised that, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Good.
Cool. Good stuff. First of all, do you see the benefit in just like slowing down and actually talking about the sentences that are being produced from different people? You'll find that what you'll actually do here is that, let's just say, bow to the ground. Before you would get them to create a more written-like response in the middle here. Like these sentences actually probably should be more over here because they're fully finished products, really. But if we had to say bowed to the ground, okay, which was a spoken-like answer, okay, an answer to this question from a student could be that, the people bow down to the ground or pray or something like that. Like it could be quite a simple answer. But putting it on the board first and then discussing how you can actually progress it might help that student to understand what they're actually asked to produce. So it could go to the salat prayer involves bowing to the ground. Simple change, but we've now moved towards a more written-like text, and it's actually following the correct structure of given and new, or theme and ream if you've been doing the readings, where it follows a new information, then given information, then something new. The typical explanation, cause and effect thing. So you can spend a bit of time explaining that, okay, this isn't quite there yet, let's move it on. And then after that, they write, you can collect up, or you can just discuss the answers that are given. And then you may find that, yes, they've nailed this text type to describe it. And then you can give them another, quick writing example the next day with another stimulus. I just did a picture because it's quick and easy, but you can do, the text type that you're going to write in for the assessment task, like a reading or a source or whatever. But you're doing lots in this. You're building the field first of all by providing more specific vocabulary. You're focusing on question types, so the mode, what you're expecting from them. Here you're actually focusing more, about moving from spoken to written. So you're kind of teaching that writing is not just a one-off process, but it's actually something that has to be developed. And you can say, genuinely that I don't know a good answer to this. I'm going to have to take some time to refine it for you while you give it your best shot as well. So you're doing a lot, and really, we're done now, but that was done in about 15 minutes. Again, I know it's different. Can you see any value in taking time to build the fields using a mode continuum?
So this can be adapted into like a pre-test and post-test with success criteria.
100%.
Saying, I want you to develop the skill of listing ideas into a coherent sentence.
Yeah.
Writing structure.
Yep.
What can you write now?
Yep.
These are the skills I want you to develop at the end of the lesson or whatever, or lessons. You can say, now have a go at it.
Yeah.
It's the same stimulus.
Yeah, exactly the same question.
Yeah. And what you're doing is you're not ignoring content, because you're building the field through it, but you're actually teaching skills as well as content. Because we could go through a written notes about the Salat prayer is da-da-da-da-da. It's done every single time, and that could take half an hour, but we're actually kind of creating a bit of bang for our buck with the fact that we're doing both content and skills at the same time. And I've seen the mode continuum done in heaps of different forms. Often you'd start with, you actually give the sentences to them, kind of like the example that I got from the textbook, and they order them, they don't have to do any work, but they just order them themselves, and the discussion is around, okay, well, why is this different from this? And they'll say, oh, this one uses big words, but this one doesn't. Okay, well, that means that to be more written like, you have to use more, technical vocabulary, so that when you get up to this point and you're starting to write it down, you could say, facing the same direction, good, but what's the vocabulary that I want you to use in this field for that? So there's endless ways that you can apply it, but the whole idea is that this is a visual joint construction where it's being developed. All right, so that's us for today. I'll just go to the last slide here. Oh yeah, and you could have actually changed the field and had exactly the same thing, right? Which was about, explain how passengers retrieve their bags at the airport. The same information field can be built from that, but we refined it in a different way. And it probably wouldn't be the best text to do that, but, you could. So the takeaways: context, funnel focus by addressing the purpose, field, tenor, and mode of every writing task. So establish it before you actually start a writing task. The mode continuum, it emphasizes the differences between spoken and written responses. It's a visual framework for running a joint construction, okay, with a bit of structure to it, like there's an end goal to it. It's an excellent opener to detailed analysis of written response features. And the try this is the two activities that we've done. If you are keen to do one-on-one mentoring, where we look at a class, we've already started at Jess, but wanting to look at a class and maybe create a writing task, all I can offer really is time to come into the class and run this for you, or for you to give it a shot and me team teach with you, so I can stand at the board while you're explaining some field that I don't know, and then we can evaluate it, or you can just do it, and then our one-on-one discussion can be evaluating how it went and what you can do next. Maybe bring some work samples from it. But before we get into actually analysing, okay, why is this the way that it is? like about the structure of the sentence, let's begin by actually giving the context first, and trying it that way. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Missing 2 words. Good people.